Is that all right?
Can you see?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
I will clap. So welcome to another episode of Resting Bitch Face. We're tackling quite a critical topic today. So something we have actually spoken about before and something that I think we're quite passionate about. The question is, what should your marketing agency be accountable for? So when you're investing in a marketing agency, obviously as a business, it's quite a big cost. I think you should know what to expect in terms of accountability, transparency, results, and what they're actually taking responsibility for. So I think within this episode, there's a few bits that I want to cover. So primary metrics and KPIs that agencies should be responsible for. The importance of transparency and communication in agency accountability. How often you should expect progress updates and reporting. I think that's one that people forget a little bit. The agency's role in strategy and flexibility and adapting to changes, super important. And how to address accountability issues if your agency isn't meeting the expectations that you've got.
Just sack 'em.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just they've not necessarily done that. It's how to fix it going forwards, because it's different for every business. It's different for every agency. So question number one, Dan Wall. What should a marketing agency be responsible for in terms of results?
Yeah, it's
a big question.
It's the age-old thing of saying it depends, but let's look at this in a little bit more detail by the way of, you said right back at the beginning of this episode, you said something about, you used the word expect, and I think expectations management is fundamental. But I would actually, what I'm thinking of here, the scenario I'm thinking of here is a new working relationship between a client and an agency. So you're starting off. Expectations management is so often missed or mismanaged. Expectations are mismanaged, or the whole thing is missed. And it just sets things off for that new relationship on completely the back foot and the wrong footing. One of the things in terms of expectations that we're really passionate about this is KPIs.
Yeah, 100%.
Now,
anything. So even you're saying like new relationship, but even like an existing relationship, new project, every project should have KPIs.
Yeah.
Every relationship and anything where you're doing a service for a client, it should always have a KPI.
100%. Now, I have quite a strong feeling on this, and I think I have a strong feeling on this for a couple of reasons. The first is, let me say it first. I think KPI setting should be as collaborative between the agency and the client as possible. Now, the reason why I say that is because I've seen it happen when it is client giving the agency KPIs when they're not in a position to be qualified enough to be doing that.
But also the other way around.
And part two is exactly
an agency is just throwing metrics at a client, which isn't what they've historically measured.
Yeah.
And what they're expected to bring back and report on.
Yeah. And also, I'm just thinking of a metric that we've landed on the last couple of years, and so therefore it's a relatively new one, is share of search. Which is, for anyone who's listening, it's like a leading indicator, a great indicator for ultimately bottom line and market share. So if your share of search, in theory, if your share of search is skyrocketing, you'd like to see that map pretty closely to market share doing the same. It's really, really good for as an indicator to map in the like holistic effectiveness of all marketing activity. So, for example, digital PR plays a great leading role in enhancing or what's the word, like reporting into influencing, that's the right word, influencing share of search. So I'd also say like there are some, this is where this collaboration needs to come in, because you're getting agencies who work across a whole plethora of industries where we've got some clients that work from a paid perspective to a cost of sale as the leading metric. The next client that comes along in paid or in SEO, cost of sale won't mean anything to them. So there has to be, you have to lean into the client's industry and the client's ways of working and what's going to make sense to them. There's no point. I often find myself in conversations with potential new clients when we talk about reporting, and we talk about our reporting proposition as being tailored to them for it to make sense as much as we can, because there is no point in giving a brand or a client an off-the-shelf set of metrics that don't make any sense to them.
No, and you've also got to look at what they've had in the past, because most of the time they are looking at that, comparatively, year on year, month on month, whatever else. And particularly if it's a new client, you can't just suddenly throw a whole load of new stuff at them. Yes, that might be what you think is important to track, but you've also got to continue to track the things that they've previously tracked.
Yeah,
because
definitely,
that's what they're used to seeing as well, and they're not necessarily going to understand a whole brand new metric straight away.
No,
it takes time.
It does.
And it takes time to know what you can expect to see from that metric, what your goals are, and it's up to the agency to educate the client on that as well. Yeah,
completely right. I think that it has to be a meet in the middle here. I just don't think you can enforce a set of KPIs and metrics sort of blindly from either side to the other side, like client driven or agency driven, because as I said, expectations management from day one is so important, and KPIs are so important, because ultimately you need to know what we're going to, as an agency, I'm saying here when I say we, what we're accountable for driving.
And
needs.
By when.
Exactly that.
That is the other thing that a lot of people forget, is it's all well and good to throw in a KPI out there, but you have to have a timeline that goes with it.
100%, yeah.
Because otherwise it's completely redundant. It doesn't mean anything. There has to be a set goal.
Yeah.
And a set time in which to achieve it.
Yeah, there's got to also be, in and amongst all this, a large element of, I'm not going to sort of say like bravery, but like honesty from both sides to challenge the KPIs. There has to be that open communication and relationship, which I know can be hard on like day one, let's say, to positively challenge the other party who are maybe bringing KPIs to the table that you're going, like, yeah, like what I would find myself, and we've had it before, where we would want to say it as this sort of positively challenging like narrative that I'm saying. If a set of KPIs that came our way and we're like, right, we think they're unreasonable, it's not a shutting down exercise where you go, whoa, we're the agency, you listen to us about KPIs. Not that at all. It's okay, you brought these KPIs to us, we're a little bit nervous about those. Can you walk me through how you've arrived at those?
Well, I think this leads really nicely onto the next point, which is about transparency. So this is something that us, as an agency, we're very transparent in the way we work. It's a really important value for us. And it links very much into what you're saying as to why it's an important thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of agencies out there, and this is the same as any business. There's always, people doing it the dodgy way around, that aren't transparent, and as a result hide particularly results behind other stuff.
Yeah.
So they choose to omit the bad stuff and only present positive results, which obviously if you've got KPIs and you know exactly what results you're expecting and what you're expecting to be reported back to you, then you'd notice straight away if one of those metrics was missing, which that all links together. So if you've not, well, you'd hope any good agency is always reporting absolutely everything.
You'd hope.
But if you've not necessarily set the expectation, it's giving them the leniency to choose what they can report, which is quite often where then it's not the best stuff. And also within that transparency, that links back to what you're saying about honesty and being able to actually communicate effectively between the agency and the client over what everybody needs.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing that that is almost that backdrop to what you've just been saying there about there's too many dodgy people and agencies out there, unfortunately, that will like pull the wool over your eyes or manipulate the narrative in terms of metrics. Unfortunately, in this case, I'm using the word unfortunately, from a digital perspective, a marketing perspective, there is so much out there in terms of data and metrics that you can pull from, that you can almost create that narrative if you've got the wrong, if you're morally coming at it from completely the wrong perspective. And warning, there are people out there that do this. It's a pick and mix from like what's going to look the best.
Impressions.
There you go, like something that really is, I'm going to say nonsensical. I don't mean it as strongly as that, but in terms of where value is and the story, I think it's too easy to lean on having a look across the board, because there's so many metrics and KPIs that you could pick from and be conveniently painting a very positive picture. There's also something in this as well as a related side note, which is like dashboard reporting and reports. I find myself in conversations, maybe less and less now, which hopefully is a nice thing and a positive sign, with our reporting proposition of the dashboard that we will plug all campaign numbers into, which is live, and clients, all contacts that we have at client side have access to that. There's a time in my time at Flaunt where I'd be talking about it and saying, and don't worry, there's no middle dashboard changing the numbers in terms of what you're going to see versus as the brand, as the client, versus what we're going to see as the agency. And it's almost ridiculous that I'm having to say that, if you know what I mean, like flag, oh, by the way, this dashboard,
by the way, it's real data.
Yeah, that's the data we see. We make the decisions off that data, so you can trust in the decisions that we're making for the reasons based on that data. So that's a transparency thing as well, that unfortunately we've heard horror stories. We will continue to hear horror stories that, oh yeah, we get a dashboard from our agency, but and then subsequently found out or something where it's like, it's not the dashboard that we actually see, and it's not a shared it's not a shared dashboard. So obviously I know we talk about it all the time, and there's just, trust is just enormous, isn't it?
Yeah, trust, because that also links nicely into actually being adaptable. So if you can trust your agency and know they've got your best interests at heart, you can trust that they're going to adapt as and when things need to within any of that reporting. Because for any business, what your KPIs, they're not necessarily set in stone.
No, they shouldn't be.
Well, exactly. And what you want to see changes depending on your business goal, and things in a business can flip like that.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, that is a hard expectations management thing to talk about, hard, because all well and good, rubbing your hands, getting excited about day one on a project, a client or whatever relationship, and setting these KPIs. You're almost setting these KPIs and then just sort of caveating each time, by the way, these have to be open to be changed because of, I don't know, market conditions, pandemics,
budget changes.
There's so much. It's like forecasting as well. When we get into like forecasting for a client, we'll do our utmost with our forecasting methodology has come on leaps and bounds, constantly iterating on top of it to bring it to be the most accurate, and we can be the most confident in the output of our forecasting. But we still have to caveat that forecasting, look at the SERP now with AI overviews. What's going to be the impact of AI overviews to our forecasting proposition? We're constantly having to plug new stuff in. So today you could be knocking on our door and we could be saying to you, yeah, we'll do some SEO work for you. Let's have a look at a forecast. We'll run you a forecast. And in 6 months, the methodology that's gone into that forecast could be completely obsolete almost. It could be completely void, in the sense of something has massively changed in the last 6 months. And that's not unheard of in digital. So, there's adaptability.
There's adaptability
on both sides.
Thing as well, like, if you trust your agency, they're not just going to get to the end of, say, a quarter, give you some stats and say, well, it didn't happen because of all these reasons, and then list things that are almost like blaming the client. Yeah. Whereas if you've got a good working relationship with your agency and they are transparent and you trust them, instead, along that journey, as things alter, they'll say, this has happened and this is the impact that we think it might have.
Yeah.
Rather than, if they say, look, we need to cut budgets here, or we need to change focus here to sell more or whatever else. The agency is responsible for making the client aware of the impact of those changes, so that then when it gets to that end reporting goal, like we talked about earlier, if there is a timeline against a KPI, and for whatever reason they're not getting to that and going, oh my God, what's happened? They should be totally aware of how that might affect things, and those KPIs should be reset at that point.
I'd say you're absolutely right. Like, set in stone is just not the way to think about most things, to be honest, in agency relationships. And that's not a fob off. That's not a way of relieving ourselves that we're not going to commit to anything. You can commit to something, but you also need to commit to the fact that you will revisit these together. Like, that's the thing that, as I started this, when you asked me the first question, like, collaboratively together.
It's all about collaboration and trust.
Revisit. And trust sort of surrounds and is the centre of all of that. If you don't have that trust and the transparency at every point, and transparency runs through everything, like you touched on earlier, flagging when things aren't going right and owning them within what you can control of that as well.
And also providing solutions. It's not just about blaming it. There's nothing worse than, if as a business you're just getting a figure and then an excuse as to why it's not what they expected. You should never be in that situation. Ever.
No, definitely not.
Here's a good one then that is quite a tough question, but it links very nicely to what we've just been saying. What to do if your agency isn't meeting accountability standards?
Well, I made the joke right at the start when I said don't sack them. But I understand the potential situation where it's got to, that you might be faced with just chucking it all, putting it all in the bin and sacking your agency. But I would actually like to think, given all the things that we've just talked about through this episode up to this point, I'd like to think if there is, if they're untrustworthy and you've just completely lost all faith in them, then you're probably at the stage where you're thinking about sacking them. What I would say is give them the opportunity to you need to almost be as transparent with them from a communication point of view as you would hope they would be with you. You say things aren't going to plan.
This is where it's not.
Let's have a conversation.
The conversation has to happen first.
Don't get like I strongly believe and appreciate when our clients, because it's not all hunky dory. Like, let's not beat around the bush. Not every day is 100% success, but the best relationships that you can forge with these people, built on like trust and transparency and communication, is when they give us the opportunity to not think of us as that transactional service provider where they go, nope, this isn't being met, so therefore you are being sacked. And they'll actually come forward and go, let's have a bit of not a reset, but like a revisit.
Let's talk about it.
Let's communicate. Let's maybe revisit those KPIs. Let's
find a solution.
Let's talk about who needs to be responsible for what elements of that solution, but let's find a solution. And then fair dues.
Let's learn from it. It's all about learning. Not everything is always, like you said, not everything always goes perfectly. There might be an individual campaign in, say, like a 3-year span that maybe does fall through and it doesn't it doesn't hit what you wanted. It doesn't come out as you expected. But do you know what? That's a really important learning. Like, massively.
I think as well, like expectations management again, and before you're kicking off with a new relationship, new project, campaign, whatever you want to call it, I think it's also good to map in those milestones, that even if it's been a success up until that point or not a success or whatever, things to improve, have a bit of a check-in, revisit, milestone. And even if that is a 5-minute, fucking hell, everything's going to plan, that's still worth doing and committing to right back at day one. So I think it's afford each other the opportunity. Obviously, I appreciate that ain't always going to be the case and successful, and out of that is going to be a success. So obviously, if either side are constantly collaring the other side to say, can we have a conversation? Can we have a conversation? I understand at some point you're going to be like, we need to pull the plug on this.
And but then that's not just I think the advice there is always take the learnings from what's gone wrong. And you can only do that still by having the conversation with the agency. So even if you're like, right, we're pulling the plug, there is still a conversation that has to be had.
Yeah.
Because otherwise your transition to a new agency is going to be rocky. You're going to meet the same things again because you've not taken learnings from what's gone wrong. And the only way you really get those learnings is not just internal, but it's by having the conversation with the agency, even if it's not gone well.
Yeah, 100%. So I think, there's a big learning curve in there, but it's principles, isn't it? It's the same principles again. It's trust, transparency, communication, expectations management, and they're all interlinked. And it's
interlinked. Lots of people say they're doing it and they're shy to it.
Exactly that. And it's one of the, they're all those things that are so easy to talk about and say, but it's walking the walk rather than just talking the talk. And everyone can say we're transparent as an agency. Everyone on the client side can say, look, we're going to be so trusting in you. I understand there's dynamics.
But this is why now so many agency recommendations, so many agency appointments come from recommendations now.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's always been a thing, but I'd say there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because people don't want to go through a pitch process with three agencies where they're making themselves look amazing and putting themselves in this beautiful, sparkly spotlight where they look like the most trusting, perfect agency ever. And then when you get to it, you're like, no, it's not true.
Yeah, it's a bit of a false dawn almost, really, isn't it? When pitches are made to come across as, for agencies are made to come across as like the trusted ones. And you're not going to sit in a agency pitch as an agency and say we're a bit rocky in comms and we're only going to give you these sort of dashboards and we'll make sure we're going to manipulate the numbers and stuff like that. It's not going to come.
That's where you need, even if you're going through a pitch process and agencies are always going to present themselves in the best light, you should always be asking for testimonials.
Yeah.
Well, we've had it a few times, haven't we, where people have actually asked to talk to clients.
Yeah, references. Yeah. And
have the direct conversation with them.
I think
that's brilliant.
I would say, fair dues. I would just to not caveat that, but just to add to that, I would just be cautious of, like who are you speaking to?
Yeah. Who have they chosen? Is it their best mate that lives next door?
Yeah, and obviously you're not always going to be furnished with that information from an agency standpoint. But yeah, the client, what's it called? Just a references thing is, it's interesting. I like it. I would just say, I know how we deal with those requests.
But that wouldn't be how everybody deals with it.
No. And that we've talked about case studies before, haven't we? That case studies are very good very easy to be able to
make them look amazing.
Yeah. And it's always just with caution. Proceed with caution as always.
And you know what? If you trust your agency, you shouldn't need to.
Good luck to you.
Approach everything with caution, should you? And you don't want to be in a relationship like that where you feel like you have to be cautious about everything.
Yeah. Trepidation and caution can stifle creativity and ultimately
and communication.
Well, yeah. So all of those can be answered with obviously sort of like it depends, but always the thread that runs through it is transparency, communication, honesty, all those things. But right back at the beginning, expectations management.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a massive one.
Yeah. So I think bit of a summary of what we talked about. So marketing agency generally should be accountable for clear KPIs, transparent reporting, good communication, and being adaptable, really.
Yeah. And I think just to add to that, clients as well both sides should try to go into that new campaign, relationship, whatever you want to call it, with those things in mind for both sides.
So if anybody listening to this wants a little bit more advice on any of this, advice on, setting KPIs, how to talk to your agency about it, anything like that, feel free to drop us a message. The link to our LinkedIn profiles is down in the bio underneath. But yeah, give us a shout.
Thank you.
Do you want this or that?
I do.
Okay.
Or do you want me to ask you them?
No, I'll ask you. God, you never get to do them. Are you missing rating them?
No.
Right, this or that. So, monthly reports versus bi-weekly check-ins. Oh, this is that thing of what's bi-weekly, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't like that.
That's not either.
Fortnightly check-ins.
Fortnightly check-ins, I'd call that, yeah.
Given the wording of that, and I know that I have to choose, because that is the aim of the game, I'm going to go for the latter. I'm going to go for fortnightly check-ins, and I'll just explain why, how I've interpreted that, which can be interpreted.
Mm-hmm.
Monthly reports, I feel like is a report. I've taken the other thing, which was fortnightly.
Meeting. Yeah.
Which talking about reports, where we push this, the value for us is not just a dashboard and the reports we talk about in the episode. Yeah, it's answering the so what.
Yeah.
Numbers are numbers.
How does it get there?
Trends, yes. But so what? What are you going to do about it? Are we going to keep doing the same? Are we going to tackle it because it's not heading in the right direction? Are we going to do more because it's absolutely there's potential here? So it's so what? It's context. That's where we hope that our clients see the value of our regular check-ins.
Conversion rate focus versus brand awareness focus.
I'm
had to pick one.
Gonna say brand.
Okay, good. Predictable results versus flexible strategies.
I'm gonna go predictable results.
That would be nice, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm gonna go predictable results. These are really fucking hard.
They are
So
actually,
it
yeah.
depends, or both. So these are good.
Agency sets the KPIs or the client sets the KPIs?
Based on everything I've just been saying about, it's collaborative.
If you had to pick one, though, I'd say client.
Oh, God.
I don't know. Actually, as I said that, I don't know because the agency are the experts. But the client knows what they need, surely, but they don't always.
This is maybe the hardest one for my personal take. Agency or client, I'm just going to say agency.
Agency.
I'm really not happy with that.
And that's where we'll end.